Are you hearing shots now?
No.
Okay.
But we're in the art room closet.
Okay.
Yes, I hear another shot.
You did?
I'm hearing more shots.
Okay.
The town of Moses Lake, Washington is a quiet, rural community nestled amidst orchards and farmland, not far from the tranquil shores of the lake that gives the town its name. But on one cold winter morning, this peaceful setting was shattered by a horrific act. It was early 1996, and a bitter chill gripped the area as students bundled up for school. At Frontier Middle School, kids chatted and gossiped as they headed to class, eagerly anticipating the weekend ahead. No one could foresee the terror that was about to unfold in Mrs. Kerr's fifth period algebra class. Hello guys, and welcome back to Crimeco, where we break down some of the most chilling true crime cases from every corner of the globe, providing you with the most recent and in-depth information. If this sparks your interest, we would be delighted if you could subscribe to the channel. Also, giving this video a like significantly supports the channel's growth. We appreciate your help. Now, grab a blanket to hide behind, and let's dive into today's interesting case. As students took their seats, a 14-year-old boy named Barry Lukatis entered the classroom. Barry was known as a smart but quiet kid who largely kept to himself. But on this day, he was harboring a terrifying plan. Taking a seat, Barry waited patiently as Mrs. Kerr began teaching at the blackboard. Then, a sudden shift took place as he rose from his desk, revealing items concealed beneath the long, dark coat, a rifle and 2 handguns. With an air of chilling detachment, Barry directed his attention toward his fellow classmates and proceeded to discharge his firearms. The initial shot found its mark in a 14-year-old, Manuel Villager, a well-liked student who happened to be seated towards the front. Subsequent shots echoed through the room, impacting 2 more students. The atmosphere was engulfed in a chorus of startled cries, with both the teacher and students gripped by sheer horror. Another student hit was Arnie Fritz, a 14-year-old with a reputation for his kindness, seated just behind Manuel. Additionally, 13-year-old Natalie Hintz suffered grave injuries, her cries resonating with pain. It was at this moment that Barry turned towards Mrs. Kerr, discharging an ending round into the back of the cherished teacher, who stood in shock before the board. The loud situation swiftly drew the attention of other staff members. John Lane, a courageous PE teacher, rushed from his own classroom upon hearing the commotion. Upon flinging the door open, he was met with the distressing scene of several students on the floor and Mrs. Kerr's breathless self. Barry stood there, equipped with his trusty firearm, while his terrified classmates huddled in fear.
He had a bolt-action rifle. I mean, he was trying to rack another round, and I knew that he couldn't get another round in before I got to him, and so I grabbed him.
This senseless act would forever change the community of Moses Lake. In the coming days, families would be shattered by grief. Questions would emerge about what signs had been missed in Barry's behavior, and whether anything could have been done to prevent this tragedy. But in the moment, all Principal Kerr could do was cry out in anguish over his wife's breathless self. The story of Barry Lukatis and the Frontier Middle School tragedy would soon captivate the nation. As the dust settled on that tragic day, people searched for answers about what could have driven Barry to commit such an alarming act. Classmates described him as a studious but awkward boy who largely kept to himself. Digging deeper into his background revealed a very troubled home life. Barry's parents had gone through a bitter divorce just weeks prior, leaving the boy caught in the middle of their vitriolic feud. His father owned a sandwich shop and was often away for work. Meanwhile, his mother, Joanne Phillips, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She depended heavily on Barry for emotional support, inappropriately confiding details of her tumultuous feelings and failing marriage. According to numerous descriptions, Joanne's connection with the realm of reality was waning. She expressed unsettling intentions of ending both their lives, and at one point, she even suggested to Barry that they should consider ending their lives together on Valentine's Day. Although he was able to dissuade her from such thoughts, this emotional turmoil had a profound impact on the boy, leaving him with enduring emotional wounds. He later stated that in the weeks before the incident, he felt detached from reality and descended into a kind of psychotic break. In Barry's troubled mind, the divorce seemed to trigger a flood of rough fantasies. He began writing dark stories for English class featuring unsettling characters. One named after himself who inflicted harm upon students and temporarily detained a classroom. At home, Joanne's instability exposed Barry to graphic movies like Natural Born Enders, further warping the boy's perspective. On the day of the incident, Barry came to school dressed in a long duster coat carrying objects stolen from his father's closet. He later admitted his initial target had been Manuel Villager, a popular boy who had been mean and teased Barry about his home life. The others hurt were tragically caught in the chaos of his aggressive outburst. In many ways, Barry's tale is one of a disturbed child failed at every turn. Signs of his declining mental health went ignored by his embattled parents. At school, despite his scary writings, no one detected the danger brewing inside him. In a last grasp for control, Barry lashed out, destroying innocent lives and bringing lasting pain to the community. While nothing can justify his actions, examining the turmoil swirling within Barry provides insight into how a troubled boy could commit such an atrocity. It paints a picture of a fragile child pushed to the breaking point by forces he could not contend with. In the aftermath of the incident, the community of Moses Lake was left reeling. Makeshift memorials and vigils sprang up around Frontier Middle School as students and teachers struggled to process the loss. Counselors were brought in to help the children cope with the distressing events they had endured. For the families of those lost, the pain was unimaginable. Manuel Vela's father was left wondering who his son could have grown up to be, while the Fritzes grieved the loss of their gentle 14-year-old boy. The Cares family made the agonizing arrangements to bury their wife and mother, a beloved teacher stolen right in her own classroom. As for Barry, he was taken into custody and interrogated by police. The 14-year-old calmly confessed to the unfortunate incident, showing chilling detachment as he admitted deliberately targeting the people. He expressed no remorse, behaving as if in some dissociative state. Prosecutors quickly pushed to have Barry tried as an adult due to the cold, calculated nature of his crime. As the case moved forward, speculation swirled about what could drive a child to such extremes of act. Details of Barry's dysfunctional home life came to light, generating debate about whether his upbringing and parents' neglect played a role. Barry's defense team pursued an insanity plea, arguing that he had slipped into a delusional psychosis exacerbated by undiagnosed depression and exposure to his mother's mental illness. They contended these factors diminished his grasp on reality, to the point he did not fully comprehend the consequences of his actions. Prosecutors, however, dismissed these claims, maintaining that Barry knew exactly what he was doing. They referenced his methodical planning and execution of the crime, as well as his calm, coherent confession. To support their case, they introduced Barry's disturbing creative writings from school, which depicted similar firing scenarios. Expert psychological witnesses were called to assess Barry's mental state. While opinions varied, prosecutors hammered on testimony indicating he could discern right from wrong. Ultimately, the jury rejected Barry's insanity defense and convicted him of the event.
This is strictly a sentencing issue and getting Mr. Lukaitis back before the sentencing court and to issue a sentence that comports with the change in the law.
At only 16 years old, Barry received a devastating sentence, 2 life terms plus over 200 years, with no possibility of parole. The punishment fit the harmfulness of his crimes, but many still wrestled with the fact that one child could commit such an atrocity. For the community of Moses Lake, healing would prove a long and painful process. Many survivors would carry deep emotional scars from that day, some struggling with their own later run-ins with the law. The families of the lost would forever feel emptiness where their loved ones once lived. And Barry himself would spend his coming-of-age years in the stark confines of prison. In time, he would further his education and even express remorse for his actions. But for the innocent lives cut short and survivors impacted, neither explanations nor apologies could ever make things right again. Over 20 years passed, and Barry remained behind bars serving his original sentence. But in 2012, a Supreme Court ruling changed the landscape for juvenile offenders. The justices decreed that mandatory life sentences without parole for those under 18 were unconstitutional. This seismic decision reverberated through Barry's case, ultimately requiring he be resentenced despite having exhausted all his appeals long ago. Obviously, families dreaded reopening these old wounds, but steeled themselves to once again face the man who had devastated their community.
Barry took them from us, but he didn't take their impact on our lives from us. And Arnie lives on in us. He lives on in his niece and his nephews.
In 2017, Barry was brought before a judge in the town where it all began. The 36-year-old stood shackled, his hair now flecked with gray after 2 decades of incarceration. One by one, individuals scared by his actions came forward to share their continued grief and pain. Natalie Hintz spoke of the horrors she witnessed as Barry ended her classmates and teacher. She recalled lying critically wounded beside a breathless friend's self. Her childhood was stolen that day, replaced by long years of arduous recovery and counseling. Others gave heart-wrenching accounts of their ended loved ones and all they had lost. Some voiced bafflement that their sentences of lifetimes without their children were now suddenly changed. All conveyed the aching absence left by senseless act.
My wife and I sit here today, as we have many other days, wondering what our beautiful son will be doing.
The judge acknowledged the cruelty of forcing those families to relive that event, but he assured Barry's punishment remained just. Under revised guidelines for juvenile offenders, the culprit received a new sentence equating to life behind bars without parole. For his part, Barry accepted his fate and the new sentence without appeal. He expressed that the victims' families had suffered enough without legal wrangling. In a letter to the court, he finally offered an apology for his crimes over 20 years prior. Barry wrote of being consumed by hatred and anger as a teen, devoid of healthy outlets or guidance. He acknowledged robbing those people of their futures in a wicked, cowardly act. And he thanked the community he had wounded for coming together in the aftermath, even as he tore their lives apart. Addressing the court at his hearing, Barry reiterated deep remorse and regret. He had gained the insight to recognize as a child he had been lacked the tools and maturity to properly cope with his emotions. Though he knew his words could not undo the damage,
it doesn't replace what has been taken from you. And you should have it back.
Barry committed to spending his remaining days trying to atone through education and counseling fellow inmates. For the families present, sentiments ranged from empathy to doubt to unresolved fury over his actions. The judge reminded all that justice is complicated, sometimes unsatisfying. He expressed hope the hearing provided some closure. In the end, Barry left to continue serving his sentence, and the community attempted to move forward once more. Though time had passed, the memories and pain persisted. The judge was right. Nothing could undo the wrongs inflicted against the innocent. But the families and people of Moses Lake exhibited profound strength and compassion through it all. Their community will forever be bonded by hardship and defined by the love and resilience they displayed in the face of unfathomable tragedy. Barry's day of aggression left deep scars on the remote community of Moses Lake, but it also set off alarms across the nation. This quaint rural town was one of the first to experience a school shooting perpetrated by a child, a disturbing sign of a growing epidemic. In the months and years following the attack, more stories of disaffected youth turning weapons on classmates filled the headlines. Places like Paducah, Kentucky, and Jonesboro, Arkansas suffered similar tragedies before the infamy of Columbine seared school firings into the national consciousness. Each instance left parents and educators struggling to understand the incomprehensible. Moses Lake was forced to acknowledge that even in their peaceful corner of America, a student could harbor profound darkness inside. But Barry's crime also catalyzed earnest discussions about what may drive a child to end someone and how we can intervene to prevent future heartbreak. In Moses Lake, the process of healing continues decades later, even as the community honors the memory of those lost. A memorial stands commemorating those lost, while survivors like John Lane went on to become advocates for mental health awareness and safety. Many have found purpose in ensuring positive change comes from senseless thoughts. As for Barry himself, his story illustrates how a fragile child can be utterly failed when he needed help most. In his isolation, troubled home, and unaddressed illnesses, a perfect storm brewed that would erupt in devastating fury. We must do better to provide support and prevent such alienation. But while we seek understanding about the factors that can give rise to a school firing, we must also ensure true justice and help heal those left in their wake. The families of Frontier Middle School carry wounds that will never fully mend and deserve our utmost compassion. What happened in Moses Lake that winter morning in 1996 forever changed many lives. The town became linked to a dark phenomenon which continues stealing promising young lives across the nation today. But even amidst the grief, this community resolved to come together, to cling to hope. Their quiet strength in the face of horror shows the best of people's spirit. As their story illustrates, recovering from devastating events takes time and perseverance. But we must keep moving forward, striving to spread more light to combat the darkness. We owe that much to those lost and their memories, for places like Moses Lake understand the fragility of peace and must work diligently to preserve it. Before you leave, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell. This will ensure you stay informed about the latest true crime cases we uncover. We're grateful to have you as part of our community as we explore the captivating mysteries that continue to fascinate us all. Stay curious and vigilant that even closed books still hold untold pages waiting patient revelation. Thank you for joining us, and we eagerly anticipate seeing you in our next exploration. Until next time.